Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of All the Angles, the podcast covering the business of paddle, powered by the Hexagon Cup. Representing the Hexagon Cup on this episode, we've got Jose Calvo Sotelo, who is one of the Hexagon founders, also an ex-player, and also runs Mad for Paddle, one of the leading facilities, clubs in Madrid, in the northwest of the city. He'll be helping me go through the conversation with my two guests, who are from the player agency side of the paddle world. We've got Antonio Calderon, and we've also got Pablo Tejero, who will be talking to us about how the ecosystem for professional paddle players and the agents that look after them, how that has evolved in the last 5 to 10 years. I think it's fair to say, just to start, that in the last 5 years, we've seen an incredible growth in paddle everywhere, right? If you just look at the global report, whether it's the number of courts being built, the number of clubs being built, Google searches, the number of people participating, new markets, federations joining FIP, across every measurable, paddle is going through a boom. And I think inevitably that has to have trickled through to the world of the professional scene. Everyone knows that the World Padel Tour was acquired last year by Premier Padel. Now Premier Padel is the leading international tour that kind of dominates the calendar. But of course, we've also got surrounding events, exhibitions and other tournaments like the Hexagon Cup, like the Reserve Cup, like the PPL in America. So there are incredibly exciting opportunities around the world for players, new opportunities for them to showcase their skills, showcase their partners and sponsors, make money and grow their profile. So I think that's really the backdrop of this conversation. So with that all being said, let me start with a gentle personal question, which is, how did both of you guys get into this world of paddle player representation? So Antonio, if you can start with that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Well, to be honest, I came from a completely different world. I studied law and business because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always loved sports, but I never been related with any management agency or whatever. I used to work in PricewaterhouseCoopers in strategic consulting. Not the funniest job, but it helped me a lot in a daily basis. I learned to manage so many different problems, and at the end of the day, each player, it's a kind of a small company, or even a company, not even a small sometimes. So it really helps me in my daily basis. And after that, I used to be in a financial servicer. We manage non-performing loans from different banks and from different investment funds. My function there was, I was in the international department. I used to create the company in different countries. So I was very used to travel. I was very used to create things from scratch. So I guess that even though it's not related with sports, it really helped me in my daily basis right now. Finally, I got to this business with a call of a friend that is a very good player. Told me that if I was interested in being in the business, he thought that my profile could fit well here. He knows that I really love sports in general terms. So he made me the offer and we started working, I think it's 3 years and a half now. So
Pablo, what about you? What was your journey?
It's actually quite similar, not at the end, but just in the beginning. I also started in investment banking and also private equity industry. So it was kind of also related to numbers and also related to real estate actually. But I had always a passion that was to work for a sports management firm. So when COVID came, I thought I was already prepared to found my own company. So I obviously called my partner Javier. We were very close friends since we were 5-6 years old. So we were like, okay, you're a lawyer. I've been dealing with numbers. I'm with private equity transactions the last 3 years. I think we're ready to start this. And we're both passionate and we wanted to start this, and now we're here. So very happy actually.
That was what I was going to ask, if you're happy with the change you made. Is this more fun than your previous jobs?
Definitely, definitely. I've been learning from all the works and jobs I've been in and experiences, but this is my dream. I'm having fun every day because we're not also managing paddle players. We're also in golf, football, and tennis. So every day is different from the previous day. So I'm having a lot of fun, and also I'm saying this serious. Here in paddle, there's few managers and managing companies as of now, but we do have really good relationship. Actually, Antonio and myself had a friend in common. Actually, his cousin. So we have similar values and similar backgrounds, and I'm very happy. I'm very happy.
And how is the agent world? Is it like a lot of people who kind of know each other, who've kind of worked with
Can you
Antonio?
imagine a sea full of sharks? It's more or less like that. No, I mean, you have very different styles. You have many different backgrounds. You have many different kind of people. You have different relationships. There is familiars that are there. That is someone in the family of the player that wants to have to be the manager. You have some agencies that are professional. Now we have a very big agency that is involved in NBA and NFL and those sports that is coming to our business. So I think it's too wide ocean.
But all of them, the point in common that they have is that you need to have a solid network, because I think this is about people, and this is about a lot of parties, but all of them are people, obviously. Distributors, providers, sponsors, companies related to the sport, other agents, obviously the players. You need to get along, you need to know them, you need to have the trust and confidence with them, to be dealing with them every single day. So this is about people, this is about having a strong network, and to build from there, to be successful and to be here many years.
And so I think everyone can agree that the entry of Premier Padel into the world in 2022 kind of really changed things in many ways. So I'm trying to understand what the world for the players and the agents looked like before then. And obviously, Jose, you can talk probably a little bit even further back how things were, but like, what was the nature of the relationship between the players and the agents? What was the formality? What was the expectations in terms of professionalism and off-court requirements? Like how intense and how formal was the world let's say pre 2022?
I can go further back. Yeah, unfortunately, I think I'm the older one here. Uh, but I was playing tournaments and having relationship with players even before World Padel Tour started. So in the very beginning, and as you said, padel is growing day by day. It has boomed in the last 5 years, probably since the COVID. But for example, I can say I'm a very close friend of Juan Martin Diaz. He was our ambassador in Marford Padel, but now he's gone to Miami. And Juan was number one in the world for 14 years, and he didn't have an agent. So there was not a lot of money in the business at that time. So probably the Bela was probably the first mm, player that kind of professionalized a bit more things. But even Juan Martin, being number one in the world, didn't have an agent.
And then we kind of move into
Actually,
this phase pre-Premier Padel. How did it look in terms of the players like Antonio? You look after Paquito. These players who are probably now the elder statesmen of Padel. Right? They're not Bella and Diaz who kind of are on the way out, but Paquito is kind of probably the next batch that came in. How has things changed under his time?
I think he learned, he lived that beginning, he lived in the start of his career, and he has seen how the sport was growing, and he learned to deal with problems that they didn't have in the past. But some things like the most easy one that is, now I have so much money and I have to invest it in something. So that was a problem that didn't exist in the past. If you were the top player in the world, you have enough money to have a good living style, and you can spend money in your day in a daily basis without having any problem. But you don't have any chance of even investing in something or make money long term. So I think that generation learn in the halfway of their career, they have been learning how to deal with these kind of things that there wasn't a problem in the past, as Jose was saying. Paquito is a good example for me.
So you mentioned this investment piece, like, is that one of the kind of expectations that now players bring to you, which is, I don't want you just to think about what I'm doing this year and next year. I want you to think about what I'm doing in the next 10, 20 years.
To be honest, that's more my approach, the approach that I have to the players than the players have with me. Usually they don't, when you deal with people, with players that have 20 years or that have 18 years even, and they start making so much money, they just see that they can live as they want right now. They are not thinking really in 20 years time I will retire and I won't have any income. It's not a problem for them right now. One of the conversations that I have more often during the year is, you won't always be there. Your life is really long, even though you are 20. You have to think that when you are 45 or when you are 40 and you retired from padel, you still have 30 years, 40 years to live, and that you still will, I mean, maybe now you think about yourself and you think that with 50 years, you don't want to go out, you don't want to go to a restaurant, you don't want to have to travel the world. But the truth is that you will have the same energy that you have now, maybe some less, but you will still have to live, and you need to think today in yourself on 30 years. So that's a kind of work that I try to do on a daily basis, but I think we still have so much to educate the players.
So that's obviously one key piece which, like you said, you've brought to the table in terms of your offering as an agent to your players. What other aspects have really evolved in the last 5 years or so? What is another big kind of evolution that you guys have noticed in terms of either your work or in terms of expectations and requirements of players?
Yeah.
One of the things that I have seen is that the contracts have evolved so much in the sense of professionalism. I've seen some contracts of 5-7 years ago, and I read them, and it's really, I mean, I've been dealing with contracts that were very professional, made for the best law firms in the world, and you see these things that I can't even imagine to see in a contract signed for two parties that have some mistakes even in the redaction, even in some numbers in the letters, and they are bad. I mean, they are wrong in a completely objective approach. So for me, these things are disappearing now, and now you see so many clauses that you didn't used to be there in the past. You see contracts that are very professional. You see, for me, it's like going forward in the business. At the end of the day, now we can say that we are a serious business. So we are in the early stages of that serious business.
Pablo, what about from your perspective?
Yeah, no, definitely. Paddle has grown from an amateur way. So now those athletes, the paddle players, are now influencers. So they are very connected to their followers. There's a lot of importance now in social media that wasn't a case 5 years ago. So now their attitudes, their behavior, the way they act on and off the court, it's super important. And also this brings the successful of paddle and the growth of paddle in the last 5 years has brought also other agencies, has brought TV rights, has brought events like Hexagon Cup or the Reserve Cup in Miami. So there's a lot of parties interested now in the sport. So this has helped the paddle to be more professional, as I was saying. So I connect this with what Antonio just said. Obviously, the law firms are going to come in because there's more money. So there's going to be more professional providers, more professional advisors. Also, people like us, agents, we have to be more prepared. We have to speak several languages, and the players also. They need to learn English. They need to how to behave. They need to understand how to be in front of cameras, in front of clients. So yeah, it's a complete different world now.
You've mentioned, both of you, like a few things that I really wanted to focus on a little bit more. One of them is language, which Pablo, you just mentioned. The other is kind of the social media content piece. So if we start with the social media, like I even saw, I think Paquito, who last year was the front runner in terms of Instagram followers, around just over 500,000. I saw that in the last year, he's already increased that by 10%. So an increase of 10% in 1 year for an established name, that shows you something. But even Bea Gonzalez, she increased her following on Instagram over the last 12 months by 40%. So I think the increase in the visibility of these players, especially with the support of the new sponsors that are coming into the sport, whether it's Red Bull, whether it's Alpine, whether it's Qatar Airways, it's really changing the profile. So in terms of the social media piece and the content piece, how are the expectations and opportunities around content creation evolving for the players? Like I see LeBron, for example, putting out regular videos to try and show people behind the scenes. I see Johnny Sands signing an agreement with OnlyFans, which I think has been followed with Jessica Castella, one of your players, Antonio. So this kind of expectation of providing more content, more insight, more backstage access, how has that really evolved? How do the players react to it? Do they respond to it positively, or do they find it to be a headache?
I think we can find it in both ways. So those of them has acted and evolved very naturally towards social media, and Paquito is an example. He's from 1989, so he's kind of in the finish or in the end of his career. He still has maybe, I don't know, 3 to 6 years, but he really understood that social media was very, very important. So I think he be natural towards Instagram or social media and towards his followers, but also being hands on of people like Antonio and those content creator companies that then can give a professional perspective towards his sponsors, clients, and other parties. And there's others. I won't say names, but they don't react that well with social media, and that's very, very important. Actually, I would say ranking is the most important thing for a sponsor to step in and sponsor a player or endorse a player. But the other most important thing is for sure social media, the engagement, and the way he acts when he's dealing with his Instagram, TikTok, or whatever. So people like Paquito is obviously a great example, and also Juan Lebron for sure. So there's many examples of a good way of dealing with social media, and the other way around, of course.
Yes, in the same line as Pablo is saying, I always had the same conversation with the players that this is a very powerful tool. It's up to you if you want to use it or not. I mean, you have very different styles. You can see Paquito that manages his own social network, but you have also some people like Jessica Castello, for example. You were saying the sponsor that we just signed up with OnlyFans. Exactly the target that we are trying to obtain with that is to get the potential of the visibility that OnlyFans can give you. Jessica does it. It's not that she doesn't like it, but it's not one of her preferred activities to do. Okay, so the possibility of working with OnlyFans and the powerful potential that OnlyFans can give you in terms of visibility, it was a great opportunity for us to make a step forward in that path. So,
and both of you and both of you look after quite young players, some really up and coming, Coqui Nieto and Garrido on your side, Pablo, and Antonio. You've got names like Jensen, brother and sister. You've got Cardona. You've got Leal. So I'm assuming that these younger players are already a little bit more natural and fluent with the language of social media, and so kind of maybe you have a little bit less resistance.
Yeah, but this is the same as learning a language. There are some people which is very easy for them to learn the language and to use it and to speak fluently and without being shy. And there's others who struggle a little bit more. So this is the same with social media. That you put a great example with Coqui and Garrido. Garrido has a natural way of communicating through his social media. He's a beast. He's dynamic. He likes to be in front of a camera. He loves to do different things like to cook or to be in his car or to go to a beach with his family and friends and just play the guitar. And there's other example as Coqui Nieto, as you were saying. He's a little bit more shy, but he's trying to learn and he's trying to understand how to show his fans the way he is, which is someone very well educated, very elegant, and who's actually a friend of almost the 100% of the tour right now. So those are different styles, and the sponsor needs to address or understand which is a better profile for them in terms of aligning values. And yeah, that was a great example.
And also, Pablo, I was thinking in order to create a brand, because players are a brand in themselves, they need to be authentic. So probably you have to take that into consideration when you're building the brand, right? If they're shy, if they're more spontaneous or have more charisma as Paco.
Yeah, I 100% agree on what you said. You have to be authentic. You need to show your fans who you really are, and if you really like animals and you like to be at home and you like football, just show that because people is gonna like that. And when it's very staged and it's really like this is a job for you, and you're just posting things on Instagram because you have to, people is gonna notice that for sure.
You touched, Pablo, on your last answer about language, and it's one thing I find really interesting because one of the things that I found, maybe I shouldn't have, and maybe it's unfair for me to say, but I found it quite surprising when I started really engaging in professional paddle and watching it and following the players, how few of the players speak English. And I think obviously in the past and even in the recent past, it wasn't so important. You know, when you had the World Paddle Tour with what was it, 40% of the events plus or minus are in Spain, it was such a clearly Latin language centric product where Argentina and Spain provided most of the players, most of the broadcasters, most of the sponsors, and it was almost like a kind of, you know, it was a market and an ecosystem unto itself. And of course, you had, you know, Scandinavia had interest, but the vast majority, the vast critical mass of that whole world was Spanish speaking. Now suddenly, you've got the Qataris owning Premier Padel. You've got US growing at an incredible rate. You've got the UK market growing, France growing. The requirement to be able to bridge that language barrier for players and for agents and to underline that importance of that language surely has to be critical now. And how do you manage to convince the players that that is as important as I'm thinking, right? I mean, please tell me if actually there is still no real need, or it's not as kind of cataclysmic as I'm making it out to be. But in my sense, it feels like it's got to be a prerequisite now, especially for the younger players that you guys both look after.
Yes, I'll be quick. This is a must for me. So and for the players too. Antonio was telling you before about the wealth management at their money. It's very difficult for them to understand when they are 20 years old that they have to manage their money and their wealth because the life is so long. But in this case, it's very easy for them to understand that English is super important because they are playing, I think, in 18, 20 countries, and also they have clinics, exhibitions, events in other countries in the world. So the most important language in the world is obviously English. So when they go to these countries and they need to ask, I don't know, for accommodation, for transport, or they have to speak with sponsors, and they have to be in front of the camera with the interview when they win a match, and they see they're not fluent in English, they embarrass themselves. And they're sending this message of don't really care about my fans or the sport itself because I don't speak a very basic language, which is obviously a must. So they understand they need to learn this language and others. So it's very easy for them to understand that. That's my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. The truth is that until probably like 4 years ago, it wasn't a requirement. I mean, I have some friends that play golf. I've been playing golf my whole life, and they didn't speak English when they were 16, 17. They started speaking when they needed. When, for example, John Ram didn't speak a shit of English until he was 18. But when he was 18, he needed to go to the States. He wanted to do his bachelor there. He started to work to play in the PGA Tour in the States. So now he speaks English as if he was born in Texas. He didn't wanted to learn it. He needed to learn it. So at that point, he started. The truth is that in paddle, we didn't have that need until probably, I don't even know if maybe 2 years ago, because even though they started playing some tournaments outside, most of them were in Spain, and most of the sponsors were Spanish also. So there wasn't that need. Right now we do have, as Pablo said, we have events outside. The tour is from Qatar. So now it's a must, and I think most of them are understanding it very good. And I think I think all my players are taking English lessons right now. But Paquito, more or less, he managed to speak English. So
Yeah, no, I think, Paquito was actually one of the first ones who I heard speak English, but I was surprised how many players would put out content or be in situations where you expected them to try to speak English and they really didn't want to. You could see that they kind of backed out. And I guess I have a bit more sympathy for the South American players because they're on a continent where no one speaks English technically. Do you guys have examples that you use? I mean, Antonio, you talked about the golfer, but like to show some of the players who might be a little bit like, I'm trying to focus on my volleys or I'm trying to focus on my fitness. I don't have time to put this into my calendar. I'd rather not. I barely like speaking in Spanish. Now you're forcing me to speak in English. Do you guys have like case studies and examples that you show that go, look, this is not just about, wouldn't it be nice? This is going to double your income.
I do have one that is a very clear case. Mike Janwas, who speaks amazing English, when the paddle in Sweden started to grow like crazy, I think 70% of his sponsors' income came from Sweden. And even though he was a very good player, and even though, of course, he was going to be one of the top players in the world in some years, what makes the difference is that when he was there, he speaks to everyone very easily. He could, even though, of course, he's a very good public relations, but what makes the difference really is that he could speak English for hours and it wasn't a problem for him. So Swedish sponsors were amazed with him. Everyone wanted Mike in Sweden.
And then the last piece, and Jose, I'd love to get your perspective or also Juan Martin's perspective through you. We already touched on this towards the beginning, but this kind of long-term planning for the players is quite important, whether it's to become an ambassador of an event or whether to become an ambassador of a club or to have an academy project in your name like Bella has. How important now is that becoming to the mix that players expect and agents have to deliver? Antonio, you already mentioned it's something that you like to believe is like a USP that you provide in your service, but is it becoming something that more and more people are starting to think about?
Well, I have two examples, and one is very recent, and we have it in Mad for Padel now. Is Paquito he launched his Paquito Navarro Academy in February while he's still an active player and one of the top ones. So I think that shows that he has a long-term vision and he knows that padel is going to end and he needs to continue doing things that can give him an income. And Paco is very clear about this. He says he knows that the day after he's retired, no one will remember him. He exaggerates a bit,
I question that,
but sport is very cruel, and that's true.
It feels like now, especially when there's more money, and especially as people can see how markets and products are kind of being built for the long term of paddle, you want to attach yourself to that. Bella is attaching himself to Wilson in quite a long-term play. Is there a sense now that players are signing long-term deals, like beyond their playing career, in order to become kind of ambassadors after they retire, or has that not yet occurred in the paddle world?
There is a couple of examples about that, but I think a player when he's playing, he needs to address what is his strength apart from playing paddle when he finishes his career. So I'll make an example. If you're a good broadcaster or you like to be in front of a camera and comment those paddle games, go for it. Start thinking about what would be your next step and start getting some meetings to get a path once you finish. If you like to coach and you like to be involved in an academy, or you would like to have your own academy because you're a businessman and you like to do business, so all of the players should think about what is my strength other than playing paddle, so I can address that once I'm retired, and because I'm good at that, I think I'm going to do all right after my career. So that I think that's important. So Bella, maybe it's a great example because he obviously understood what he needed to do, but also had a great agent behind him telling him, okay, Bella, you're number one, but paddle it's going to explode, it's going to boom in the short, in the long term. So let's start building a brand towards your name and you as a player. So when you retire, everything's going to be easier for you. So I really think players should be thinking and understanding where should they go after they finish their careers.
And I guess the final pillar that I wanted to focus a little bit on before we kind of start heading towards the end is the partners that you guys are now talking to. How has that evolved? Because I imagine that 3, 5, 10 years ago, agents were bringing kind of mainly endemic brands, like equipment and clothing and balls and shoes. But now, you're seeing non-endemic Spanish brands like a Cupra, for example, who have been a quite long-established partner in paddle. And now you're seeing almost the next level, which is non-endemic beyond the Spanish markets. So whether that's Alpine or whether that's Red Bull, Seagram percent, like how is that evolving? And again, how are you and the players trying to identify and secure those kind of broader relationships?
What I've seen is that we are finding it. I mean, I don't need to go to find, I don't need to jump into some business that as I used to do, or as I used to need to do. Right now, multinational brands have seen, everyone wants to be in something that is growing, that is going well, that is performing better every year, because you know that you are signing to the contract for the next 3 years and you are paying cheaper than what you should pay in 2 years' time, or what you should be paying in 3 years' time. So for me, at least, I find it much easier than what it used to be. But at the same time, we are finding partners that are more demanding than they used to be. It's not the same signing with, with a friend of the family that has a restaurant and wanted to be in the T-shirt, and he was happy if you send him a T-shirt and you remember him in social network twice a year, than, for example, Seagrams that require a whole marketing campaign to explode the sponsor that he's betting so much money. So it's like a kind of mixed feelings, no? It's easier to find them, it's more difficult to satisfy them. So I need, at least in my daily job, I need to balance, because sometimes you can die of success if you sign so many things.
And do you get to the point now where you could be selective? I know that still the primary inventory is the shirt, right? A player can offer. As you mentioned, content provision and all that supports it, but there's limited real estate on that shirt. I'm assuming you don't want to become like a Formula One kit or a Italian volleyball kit.
It's true. What you are saying is absolutely. I mean, you have to select. You cannot. I mean, if I have unlimited events of the player and unlimited social network actions, I can sign, I don't know, 100 contracts every month, but you cannot. At the end of the day, you have to manage and try to don't explode the player too much. The player has to be happy because, of course, they travel so much because of tournaments. You cannot have an event every single week because it's incompatible with your sports career. So, and as you said, in the past, it was, as you said, something that it was almost real estate. You have to find a spot, you pay for the spot, and that's it. Right now, the logo in the T-shirt is probably the less important thing of the sponsor. So,
as Jose was saying before, all the players must be authentic. So all the players have a different way of being. So the brands are going to come for the player they really want to align with. So as you were saying, yeah, it's very important to select which companies, brands, or sponsors want to accompany you in this travel, and it's not the same Paquito or Garrido or Yanguas or Koki. Both they're very different. So the brands related to them are going to be different too, and Antonio was saying that it was very local 5 years ago or 10 years ago, the restaurant or the car dealer or a shopping center in the city, and now they're all international. And as you were saying, they're non-endemic. They are really looking into paddle like Red Bull because they're seeing there's a big growth, and it's a very, very, very important opportunity now because in 10 years I think it's going to be more established and it's going to be like tennis, like also more expensive. So it's a great opportunity now, and a lot of the biggest brands and companies in the world stepping now in the sport. So that's good news from our side.
Yes, I agree that compared to other sports, paddle probably now is a cheap sport if we compare it to tennis or to golf. But I wanted to ask you, we're talking about top players. I mean, Paquito, top ranked players. How are you managing to find sponsorships for the rest of the, let's say, the mortals, the average player that now, since the eruption of the Premier Padel Tour, tournaments are no longer local. They have long trips and they're struggling because the prize money of the tournament still doesn't allow them to play without worries. Like, is it easy to find help from sponsors for those kind of players?
No, the short answer is no. But as Pablo said before, the first KPI that you have to focus is the ranking, but the second one is social network. If you have people that is not on the top ranking, but have very powerful social network, you can manage with that. If not, it's a problem. Of course, if you are the 60th in the ranking and you have 1,000 followers on Instagram, you are invisible, and it's very difficult that a brand is going to bet on you. Apart from the sports brand, okay, sports brand can bet on you because of your future, because they think that today you are not, but in the future you will be. You can manage that, but try that a non-sports brand betting on you is very difficult. And of course, at least myself, I have so many problems to find sponsors to the lower ranked players. However, we try to include them in bigger campaigns. As I was saying, if brands let us some kind of space to work, we try to, and it's useful for both of them because, for example, we have a great sponsor that is Kia, the car brand, and we are able to make such a huge campaign that we can include there some players that are on the bottom of the ranking, but still being, as they want to familiarize paddle concept with Kia, it's easier for us to include those kind of players that we were saying. Jose, that of course, Kia is not going to bet one on them, but as a part of a whole strategy, it's easy to find them.
Yeah, I totally agree. That was a great question. It's very difficult now. It's getting more and more similar to tennis. Obviously, age is super important. If you're 150 in the world, but you're 18 years old, obviously it's going to be our story to tell to the brands. It's going to be easier for us. But yeah, Antonio was totally right. If you are above 50 or 60 in the world, and you don't have strong social media, it's very difficult from us to defend the player towards sponsors. But they need to understand that, and they do understand that, and it's our work, and it's a difficult work when that happens, for sure.
I wanted to ask a question about the disparity between men and women in paddle. So on a prize money basis, we obviously can see that there's a difference. For example, just the P1 event, where the prize money for the winner is, for the men's is 51,000, for the women it's 34,000. So we know that there is a disparity between the men and women when it comes to prize money. What do you think the future for the women's side of the game is how do you approach their opportunities and their challenges differently than, for example, some of the male players that you represent?
Well, at the end of the day, as I told you, they are different companies, and you have to deal with the facts and the KPIs that you have. For example, if I'm going to negotiate Paquito and Jessica Castelló to Bull Padel, I can sell the story that I want, but they know how many rackets they sell from Paquito, and they know how many rackets, not even from Jessica, how many rackets of female players they sell. So it's very difficult to try to sell them that they have to pay the same, or they have to try to close the gap between male and female, because they, at the end of the day, they know the numbers and they know how much they're worth for them. With brands that are outside the sport, for me it's easier to work. And I don't have those kind of problems because they are looking for visibility. So if the social network is powerful, there is not that gap. At least I don't find that gap. If you have a male player and a female player that are similar in terms of followers, or I have this example with Jensen. Jensen has very powerful social network. Her visibility is quite good, and he's not being paid less than a top 10 player outside the sport brand. Okay. Mm-hmm. They are getting paid more or less the same in terms of sponsors. So, as Pablo said before, if your social network is powerful, you have a story to sell, so everything is easier.
And Pablo, can you touch a little bit on the main differences between the paddle names that you have and the non-paddle names that you have? As you mentioned, All in Sport represents players in football, in tennis. There's still a big gap in terms of visibility, in terms of profile, in terms of the money that they earn. I mean, I saw a statistic where I think Coelho up to this point in the year has earned somewhere in the region of, I think it was about 180,000 euros, whereas Iga Świątek, the best female tennis player, has earned north of $6 million at this stage in the calendar. So there's obviously still a big delta, but on a day-to-day basis, what are the big differences, and do you try and drive your players to do something differently in paddle to try and help close that gap and to try and hustle a bit more?
I think the most important fact here is time. So paddle is going to reach that level, but we need time for other players of other countries to step in, to make the tour more international, and obviously to attract the TV rights that makes the prize money 10 times, 15 times, 20 times bigger, which is the difference now between tennis and paddle. So you were right. Iga Świątek has made that money throughout the year, and Coelho too. That's a difference of 20x or 30x. But in paddle, this is very, very important to address. When you go to a stadium to watch a paddle game, imagine there's 50,000 people watching. 90% of those viewers play on a weekly basis or daily basis paddle, and that not happens with tennis and golf. They do play, but they don't play as much as paddle. So that's why the brands and sponsors in paddle play that much. So I've been dealing and negotiating with tennis contracts, with the golf contracts, and the prize money is, as I was saying, much bigger in tennis and golf rather than paddle, but not the brand contracts. Obviously, if you talk about Carlos Alcaraz or Iga Świątek, they're going to be earning more for the sponsors, but the gap is not that big. I would say Arturo Coelho, and this is something, maybe I'm wrong, but he would be around 3 million, 4 million in total sponsorship, let's say. And if you think about Carlos Alcaraz, which is the number one male player, he's, as of now, and this is certain information, about 35, 40 million per year. That's 10 times. If you compare the numbers 5 years ago, it was 100 times. So we're getting there, but we need to let the sport grow. We need to let other talents from many other countries to step in, as you were saying, Sweden, Italy, France, Paraguay, Mexico, USA. So then it becomes more international. Then the TV rights step in, which really thrives the money and the economics in sports. That's why football is the most paid sport in the world, because TV rights are the most important factor. And in paddle now, you watch the game through YouTube or Red Bull, which is all right, which is amazing in comparison what we had a few years ago. But there's a lot of work to do over there still.
Let's talk a bit about IMG. So, there are milestones in the evolution of a sport or a sports business. The Premier Padel entrance was a moment. Red Bull entering the sport was a moment. For me, it feels, especially since my background in tennis, IMG's entry and interest in the paddle industry is a moment. And they've come in, they've gone big guns, they've gone for the number one player in the world, and they're obviously trying to make a statement of intent. How do you feel that moment, that entry into the market, that now the players, the agents, the businesses around paddle have now got this, gorilla in the room? How do you think that's going to change or evolve what's happening in the locker room and in the negotiations in and around paddle? What does this mean for the industry?
Well, Pablo and myself have this conversation so many times,
Yes.
and I don't know if there is a right answer for this. My view, I try to stay in the positive side of the things, and the positive thing is, of course, if you are playing in a regional league and Real Madrid comes to play, of course, your first instinct is be having some kind of fear, because you feel that he's going to go through over you and he's not going to rest anything. I mean, they are going to kill you in 2 moves, right? But the truth is that I think is at the same time, IMG in the market means that the market is performing well, means that so many brands will enter in the market, means that so many opportunities will come around IMG. I mean, if IMG is able to bring, I don't know, imagine a bank into paddle, why Pablo or myself are not going to be able to bring the first competitor of that bank to also to paddle? So I try to stay, as I said, try to stay in the positive side, but it's a kind of ring that bells, and we need to be professional. We need to be ready. For me, it's just a kind of opportunity. So it's just like the big fishes are coming. Stay tuned.
Pablo, from your point of view?
I would talk about a great talk that I have with a big Nike head 2 years ago, and he said the following statement. He said, "Paddle needs Nike, not Nike needs paddle." So that was a very strong statement. I wasn't 100% agree with him, but I understood his point. And where you were saying about IMG, the most important thing is, as I said before in the beginning of this conversation, that the most important thing was people. So if you see the team that IMG has put up to be managing paddle business, is people that has already been many years in the paddle business. So of course they have a huge company and sports management firm behind, but those guys are very well known from our side. We know them for many years. Obviously, Jose has been dealing and meeting Bebe for many years, and also us with Mickey, which is an agent and is also from our age. So yeah, it's important for AMG to step in. They would definitely bring new brands, and they would definitely be a threat for us. But it's also good news. It's also good news. That means that paddle is getting importance. They see the profitability towards the sport, and they brought the division in because they definitely think paddle is going to be a strong business. So for IMG, for Red Bull, for Nike in the future, those are really big things for us, and good news at the end of the day. I really think that.
I agree with you. I think it's good for the sport.
To close out this portion, what do you think is the future of paddle? How do you think paddle is going to look for you guys as the agents, for your players in 3 to 5 years' time? I'm fascinated to know where you think it will be and how it will be different from today.
My guess is there's going to be a non-Argentinian or Spanish champion.
In 3 to 5 years?
In 3 to 5 years, let me say 7, please.
Giving yourself a little bit of breathing space.
You already have Pablo Lima, Brazilian also, but I'm talking from a new different country. I think Italy is investing a lot in paddle. Also, as I was saying, Mexico, Paraguay, or United States. So I really believe there's going to be a new champion from a different nationality, and also I think the best benchmark for us is tennis. That sport is like our bigger brother. So I think the path of paddle is going to be very similar to tennis, and that means there's going to be, for instance, and this is not like a good message for us or Antonio. We deal with many players. I deal with 7 to 9 players. I don't really know now, but Antonio maybe has 15 to 20 players. But now, if you have a top 10, those are really big companies, as Antonio was saying, and I don't think they are going to understand that I deal with the number 6, number 8, number 10, and number 2. I think there's going to be big agents with big players, and they're going to be in an individual perspective. So one agent with one player, or maybe 2, because those are going to be generating more and more money. So you need to really establish a team just for them and looking after them. That's my 2 big guesses, but I might be wrong.
Antonio?
His second prediction, I completely agree with that. The first one, I think that we will have some promising players from outside Spanish or Argentina or Brazil, but I don't think we still have one player. For me, I think in 3 to 5 years we will see the States jumping into the game. I think that is the next big market that they will come up to our business, and in 3 to 5 years, I hope and I guess that we will have them, and they will be probably leading the sport. That's my guess, that the States will make the difference. from here to 3 to 5 years.
What about you, Jose? You don't get off easily. What is your prediction for the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I quite agree with both of them. I'm sure the United States are going to be a big actor, but maybe it'll take a bit more time. It's a very big country with a very big difference in between the different states, like even like different countries in itself, and it'll take maybe a bit longer. I hope we still keep winning the Spanish players. Still keep ourselves in the top positions, and I hope the sport becomes Olympic. I think there's a good chance of paddle becoming an Olympic sport, and that would also help a lot for the visibility and the growth of the sport.
And so my last question, Antonio and Pablo, is what advice would you give to anybody listening to this podcast who wants to get into the agency business? What are the do's and don'ts that you think for someone who wants to enter this space?
Definitely, there's three different advices I would give. Is you have to be willing to travel, invest your time, and meeting new people, and get coffee with everyone. You need to get along with the players. That's very, very important. And you need to invest your time to know the players, to know how they are, to be in their environment, to be living with them in the hotel, transport, planes, everywhere. Because if they know you, then you might have quite a space over there to deal with them and to match with them, and also to understand that this is a very fast growing sport, but definitely you need to respect the others. And that means sponsors, that mean other agents, that means coaches, that means people maybe you don't get along with, but you need to respect their way of doing things, and really need to respect each other. Those are the things I would say.
Antonio, anything that you would add?
Yes, I will say that prepare yourself. You need to be like you would focus on a sports competition. I mean, you need to be as competitive as possible, and in these kind of things, you need to, as you said before, be prepared to speak other languages. You need to be prepared in terms of law. You need to be prepared in terms of business knowledge. So just prepare yourself. Don't come here thinking that this is a very great business. I travel around the world. I sign contracts for millions, and I don't have to prepare myself. I think it's probably the opposite. You need to have so many tools on your bucket so you don't have problems in your daily basis.
Okay, well, I think with that, some really wise words from two individuals who really know the space inside out. And of course, thank you, Jose, for helping and engaging in this conversation. It's been super helpful. For everyone who's listening, hope you enjoyed the episode. Like, subscribe, share, the usual. And we will see you on the next episode of All the Angles, powered by the Hexagon Cup. Thank you very much.